Mahigpit ang labanan ni US President Donald Trump at katunggali nitong si Joe Biden sa katatapos na halalan, tinutukan ng CNN Philippines ang resulta ng eleksyon kung saan 270 electoral votes ang kailangan para manalo ang kandidato sa presidential race. Sa ngayon may 213 electoral votes si Trump habang 224 naman kay Biden. Kausapin natin ngayon ang kinatawan ng isang grupo ng Filipino-Americans na naroon. Makakasama natin ang National Chair at President ng National Federation of Filipino-American Associations na si Brendan Flores. Magandang gabi sa iyo, Brendan. Good evening.
Good evening. Good morning from here.
That's right. Good morning to you. What state are you in, Brendan? And were you born there or did you immigrate there? When did you go to the U.S.?
No, I was actually born in the Philippines and I was young, but I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada. But now I'm in Sarasota, Florida, so on the East Coast.
Oh, Florida. Okay. Brandon, let's begin with this. About 4 or 5 hours ago, President Trump was speaking from the White House, and he said he was claiming fraud and that he said that he's going to take this to the Supreme Court. What did you think of that?
You know, I think people expect that to happen. I mean, this is the most consequential election probably in decades, right? Or in the history of the United States. So I think people expected that to happen. And the reality is a lot can happen over the next couple of hours, over the next couple of days, because it is such a close race, right? Biden could pull a win, and certainly the Trump administration can keep it for the next 4 more years. So we're just really patiently waiting. It's like watching a thriller movie, because again, you don't know where it's going to go. It's such a close race, especially on the battleground states.
That's right. It's like a thriller movie. And I guess even what's going to happen after the elections, because when you hear President Trump saying that there's fraud, that people are disenfranchised, that he's going to take this to the Supreme Court, you begin to wonder, what are the scenarios going to look like on the streets, for example? What are people going to do if President Trump loses, for example?
You know, it's interesting that you're asking that question because I think a lot of people are genuinely scared of what could potentially happen on both sides, right? It's interesting. I was having that conversation with a good friend last night.
Right.
So if Biden wins, how would that look like with Trump supporter, or vice versa? If the Trump administration pulls it off, what's going to happen given the recent social or civil unrest? You know, I mean, you guys have seen what's happening globally in the United States. And it's, I guess I'm not anticipating or I'm not looking forward to it, but it may not look good, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's why we saw several businesses boarding up, for example, putting up wooden boards all over their properties to protect them. But when you hear President Trump talking like that and Joe Biden saying, let's be patient, what is that, you know, how does that make Filipino Americans feel? How does it make you feel? And do you still have faith in the process?
I do. You know, I think nobody expected the global pandemic, right? So it had to change. We've seen an increase in mail-in votes, right? And Filipinos historically, I mean, they both have done both sides, but according to the most recent study, Filipinos are leaning more towards Democrats, right? Or being Democrat. So I think like every single American, I mean, I'm sure many Americans didn't sleep last night, including myself, really waiting patiently for the result. I think right now the sentiment is Filipinos or Filipino Americans very anxious of what could happen because there's an impact, obviously, in immigration. There's impact in healthcare. There's an impact on, you know, what could happen, right? And there's a lot going on, and especially how the pandemic is being handled. So I think Filipinos are just genuinely waiting patiently because of what's been happening in the last couple of days.
Yeah, you said Filipino Americans are leaning towards the Democrats, but my follow-up question there is there a Phil-Am vote, and is that a solid vote, or you know, hatiba? No, are there lines that are drawn?
Yeah, no, good question. So there is Fill and Vote, right? Actually, my organization, pioneers a program for Fill and Vote because as you know, we have over 4 million Filipino Americans in the United States, and we're the second, third, arguably, the largest Asian American segment, right? But only about 2 million would be eligible to vote. The sad part is in 2016 presidential election, only 50% voted, 59% registered, and only 50% voted, which is very low considering that we're the second or third largest Asian American segment. However, this year, I'm proud to say that we have made some significant improvements. We're actually, of all the Asian American segments, we're the most enthusiastic voters, over 60%, which is larger than any other Asian segments. Now, I'm just hoping that it actually comes to fruition. The thing that we also have to be very mindful about is it's a different election year, right? Because we've seen an increase in mail-in ballots, which was not something that we're accustomed to in the past. So I would say there is, and it's really divided. Although people have said Filipinos have a tendency to lean towards Democrat. I do think it's a pretty even split because you also have some strong supporters of the Trump administration because of the values that Filipinos have, and that's what they always talk about.
Okay, Brandon, my last question is: how did you vote? Mail-in vote, or did you vote today? Sorry, yesterday, election day.
Yeah, good question. So I actually had to physically drive to the office and drop my ballot because I couldn't do an early voting, unfortunately. So I had to drop it off because it was just way too late. So I had to do that for the first time.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Maraming salamat sa iyo, Brendan Flores, who's speaking to us from Florida in the United States. Thank you.